A very good day from the Tom Brokaw News Center here in Los Angeles. Welcome, everyone, to Alex Witt Reports. We have some breaking news out of Russia, where polls are closing in 1 hour in the last of 3 days of voting in the country's presidential election. President Vladimir Putin all but certain to win a fifth term. The ballot featuring 3 other token candidates who, by the way, publicly support his policies. Earlier today, many voters heeding one of the last public messages from the late opposition leader, Alexei Navalny, by showing up en masse at polling stations to protest the election. Joining me now from Moscow is NBC's Keir Simmons. As I welcome you, Keir, what has voting been like across Russia today, and what were those protests like? Were there crackdowns or arrests? Take it away.
Well, Alex, it's really a split screen here in Russia right now. We're here at an election night event that you can see is in full swing as they prepare for those results. There's no guessing, frankly, what the result will be. We know that President Putin is going to be declared the winner in an hour's time. One of the questions the Kremlin has been looking at has been the turnout, and that is now, according to Russian authorities, over 70%, 73%, so more than in 2018. There will be, of course, many Western observers who will question that as well. And we have seen, as you say, completely different from this official event, optics around Russia after Alexei Navalny, who, of course, died in prison during this election campaign, called for people to go to polling stations and stand quietly. We saw in different polling stations around Russia people standing in line, not saying anything, but it appears making their voices heard. Take a listen.
Ну, не скажу, кто позвал конкретно из медийных личностей, но по общей народной договоренности я решила прийти к 12, чтобы безопасно выразить точку зрения.
Мое первое голосование в жизни именно на выборах президента России. Если даже мой голос ни на что не повлияет, моя совесть будет чиста перед самой собой. И, как я считаю, перед тем будущим, которое я хочу увидеть для нашей страны.
And earlier, Alex, we spoke to Boris Nadezhdin, who, of course, is one of those politicians who has been openly against the war in Ukraine. He was not allowed to stand in the election, and he told me that he does believe one day there will be free and fair elections in Russia, but he says that this is not it. I hope it happens before, while I am alive, he told me. Meanwhile, there have been reports of drone strikes across Russia. According to the Russian Ministry of Defense, 35 drone strikes, they said earlier today, in 8 Russian regions, blaming the Ukrainians, saying they are trying to disrupt this election. If you can call it an election, frankly, it is, Alex, more of a referendum on President Putin and his so-called special military operation. And everyone we've spoken to at this official event is pro-Putin and pro-war. Alex?
Extraordinary. So I'm curious about demonstrations other than the silent, conscious-held demonstrations, if you will, from those 2 people that you interviewed. We saw some fires around ballot boxes, apparently dye being poured into ballot boxes. Do you know if there were arrests made and how much that type of activity was spread across Russia?
Well, we have to rely on what we're told by the Russian authorities. They are saying that there have been more than 60 people detained, one of them an election official wearing a T-shirt with Alex Navalny's name on it. As you mentioned, there have been arson attacks and also dye poured into ballot boxes. So plainly, I mean, it is, as you know all too well, Alex, very, very dangerous to voice your opposition in this country in any meaningful way, but a number of Russians have done that. Listen, the truth is that many Russians do support President Putin. He is still popular in this country. The problem is that people who don't agree with him have not really been allowed to have their voices during this election.